AM, WRNA, Gulf Breeze, Pensacola. Also the World Wide Web at www.wrna980.com. It's time now for You Got the Power with your host, Omar Neal, live.
Well, thank you, Bob, and welcome again to the You Got the Power Show. I am your host, Omar Neal. Well, this is the kind of show that I love. It's a show that engage you in the conversation about a plethora of issues. I've entitled this show, "If It Ain't One Thing, Is Another," and it's that way because there's so many things happening all over this country and the world that requires our attention. You know, the last incident that just happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where Jacob Blake was shot in the back 7 times. Now, we thought that with George Floyd and with subsequent shootings by police officers of unarmed Black men, that this would subside, that with the backlash and the protest around this country, that there would be a reckoning as it relates to police and the African-American community primarily, but people of color in general, right? And we find that we continue to come back to the same space. It's like it just comes back, like what goes around continue to come around. And I'm concerned that there is a tipping point. We talked about this before. There is a tipping point where people just give up. They don't believe that the system will ever self-correct. And so therefore they will operate outside of any laws or anything because they don't believe that the system, the laws, work for them. I don't want us to get to that point. I don't want that kind of cynicism to set in, but it's very difficult when people continue to see young Black men being shot in cold blood before their eyes. This time, his girlfriend and children were in the car and they saw their daddy being shot. The mental confusion, the mental trauma that those children are experiencing now and will experience for the duration of their lives is something that's hard to measure. And so I want to talk about, the mental health of our people and our children as they see all of these situations take place. We're about to move into the voters arena where all of our campaigns are now ramping up for the general election in November. And what I want to do is I want people to understand that political apathy is not an option for us in this election. Political apathy, people lollygagging, as they say, around and not getting serious about making sure that you are eligible and are enrolled in the voters' roll so that you can participate. You need to make sure of that now. Don't guess, make sure of it. If you need to ask for an absentee ballot, do that now so that you can get that in early where the issue of the mailing will not be an issue. I got this new t-shirt on. I told you about, I'm starting a campaign called Vote and Remove All Doubt. Vote and Remove All Doubt. And that's the new t-shirt we got. It's called Vote and Remove All Doubt. That's what we're going to be doing. That's what this is the message, and we're going to do this all today. I got a dear friend of mine on that's going to be hanging out with me today. His name is Rodney Jones. He is a community activist. He's a brother that's doing all kinds of wonderful things. I admire this young man so much, and I just wanted him to kind of hang out with me. Hey, Rodney Jones, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, what's going on, Mr. Omar? It's always a pleasure anytime I can sit in the vicinity of an individual like yourself, kind of, pushing out every kind of power that you can push out for young people to grab hold to and run.
Absolutely. I want to talk about, something that I didn't mention, Rodney, and that is the census You know, we hadn't done a lot of
Yes,
talking about this census thing, man, but that's huge.
that's
And if
true.
we don't
It's
get
certainly.
if we don't get counted in the census, then all of the resources, because that's how they determine congressional districts and allocation of dollars to certain areas is based on the census. And if you are not counted, then that has a significant financial impact on your
Absolutely.
community. And that's another thing we're talking about, you know, the police
Absolutely.
misconduct. And I think this kind of out of sight, out of mind, because we've been so bombarded with so many issues. The COVID-19 is still here, right? And
Absolutely.
we you know, when you're dealing with all these other issues, you forget that we are under siege in terms of a pandemic, and we cannot, it cannot be business as usual. So, you know, all of those.
Cannot be.
That's the thing. Now let's talk a little bit about politics. You know, we talked about it before
Hmm.
because in Florida, ex-felons had gotten their right to vote. Their rights to vote was restored. Can give me a little update on that? And I know that there was, I think it was a basketball player. Is that James that paid for their whatever the fines
Court
were? How
fees,
many of them?
court fees, and things like that. Yeah, to update just a little bit in regards to returning citizens, and that's what we call them now. I myself am a returning citizen. So that particular amendment, Amendment 4, which we were just talking about, it impacted me directly. And what happened, we were all given our rights back to vote with a contingency, the only way your right to vote was restored is that you had already satisfied all obligations to the courts, any fines, fees, or restitution or probation that you may have been on. And if you had not satisfied that, you did not get your rights restored. So what that did is it prohibited about 700,000 individuals who were returning citizens from entering into the voting process. Now, after that, there was a filing in the courts to try to get down in Dade County to in regards to individuals who were not in a financial position to pay that, and there was a favorable ruling for that. Now, since we've had a favorable ruling in the 11th District Circuit Courts of Appeals, which did give felons rights to vote back because Judge Robert Hinkle of that 11th district, stated that he believed that it was a violation of their constitutional rights because most of the voters who voted for that amendment were not very clear in regards to felons not receiving their rights to vote based on satisfaction of the sentence. Most individuals who are voting and who've never entered into the judicial system, they felt if a man had done his time, and that's what many voters were voting based on, if they had done their time, that satisfied obligations. And so Judge Robert Hinkle of the 11th Circuit District Appellate Court, he ruled in favor of returning citizens again. However, this state is not, satisfied with anything. So our illustrious governor, Mr. Ron DeSantis, they appealed. And in that, they blocked these returning citizens from registering to vote, thereby prohibiting them from being able to participate in the primary. Now, after that, after it was the deadline passed for registration in the primary, what happened was there was another ruling that came out, but it was too late to participate in the primary. However, it is another favorable ruling, but it's kind of a mixed bag. It's saying that although, yeah, you have to pay your fees, you don't have to pay any interest or anything associated that may have came after the sentencing and after the initial obligation. So it's still kind of a mixed bag.
Hold up, Rodney. Let me ask this: if you paid your debt to society, shouldn't that be enough? I mean, if you can deal with the other things in terms of court fees and all of that, but that should not prohibit you from exercising your full citizenship right. And I like the fact of returning citizen. I like that concept, right?
Yeah.
That you are a citizen. We need to be talking about your citizenship is not, cannot be stripped from you simply because of some incarcerated state. And I think that we need to make sure that our citizens, wherever they are, have the right to vote. And so we need to do that. And see, what they do is, the trick bag is, they wait and they do the long game on you, keep you in court to discourage you, one. Secondly, to make sure all those deadlines that you needed to register has passed. And then the third thing is to make sure that you keep being off balance, not knowing what's going to happen next. And there are a lot of people get weary in that, and they just give up. And that's what I'm afraid of, is that we're going to have this kind of cynicism, right? That's going to say, okay, man, I don't want to get involved in this thing, this politic thing. It's not going to change anything. We voted, and the situation is still the same. You're looking at Jacob Blake, that just got shot in the back, George Floyd, and all of these people just killed by police officers. What will it take? What will it take for this to stop? I was talking with Bob Hill earlier today, and he was talking to me about, and I hope Bob will call in on and join me in the conversation. But we were talking about what will it take for Black people to truly get justice in this country. And he believes that until we assert our economic power, nothing will change. Until we are able to say that we're not going to spend money with Walmart or Target or whatever, however we spend our money, until we start withdrawing our money from this system, that he said we'll never get respect and things won't change. He said at the point we start asserting ourselves in terms of being conscious of how we spend our dollars, that's when things will change for us. What say you?
I say that I totally agree with that concept, simply because everybody understands the only color money has is green. Has no ethnic roots or determination. It's just green. And so if we start to exercise our economic understanding, and I think first and foremost, that's what we have to get to a place where we've been educated to the degree we understand the power of the economic power that we have. Many people think because most of them live at or below the socioeconomic status of what we consider poverty, they feel they don't have any economic power. But you buy all these candies, cakes, and tennis shoes, and these up-to-date fashionable clothing, and all of these things, spending trillions of dollars, you know what I'm saying, in the run of a year, and don't use that power to kind of levy the playing field. And I think that's was the issue that many of us are having in communities of color, not really understanding the economic power that we have. And of course, again, I agree with Mr. Hill. If we start to levy our economic power, we'll see real change. But until then, we like chopping wood.
What's interesting is, we got selective amnesia. If you think about it, we were really up in arms over George Floyd. They had all kinds of people marching all over, not only this country, but the world. And then as soon as something else happened, we moved to that, and we get distracted by that. And what we were marching about, we never got any resolution. There is not been anything passed in Congress concerning police misconduct and the different kinds of constraints that need to be placed on policing. I mean, qualified immunity has not been adjusted where it gives police more accountability for their actions. Just the whole policing issue has just been seemingly put on the back burner. And that's what I'm concerned about, is that it's got so many flashing lures that lure us into other things. Like, we're talking about, voting now, and even the suppressing our right to vote, not just as returning citizens that I love that concept, but even citizens that's never gone into the penal institution. They suppressing their votes too.
Yes, they are.
And so the question is, how do we now get a handle around all of these things, Rodney, that's bombarding us at one time? And how do we kind of compartmentalize and get people to work on those things and stay focused on them until we get to resolution?
Well, that's an age-old question, Mr. Omar, simply because, we have a difficult time sometimes, one, working collectively together. We can work in different compartments, but we have to be on the same page in order to achieve a set goal. And many of us don't quite get that. There's so many of us out here doing, positive things. We're doing real work. But if you're in a vacuum or you're in a silo, that work is right way over there, and we're not really getting any traction in regards to that. So one, I think many of the leaders who are putting together a lot of these different initiatives and things of that nature got to start partnering with other leaders and other individuals and organizations so that we can get some real direction. And that's what's happened. That's why we're so lured away by all these flashing things or these flashing lures, simply because I'm working over here in my own silo or my own vacuum, and you're working over there. Although we're talking similar language, we ain't on the same page. And once we get on the same page, then I think we'll be able to see real traction, because we can start to speak with one voice, and that one voice can echo throughout this country, economically, teaching and talking and telling about this economic power that we have, how we can get every individual in this country that has a business, that's pushing business, got products and merchandise, how to get them to listen to us. Stop spending that dollar in their stores. We got to get to a place where people really understand we mean business. Until then, people think we're just talking. And when I say people, I'm talking about communities of color, because time and time again, they see our behaviors and our reactions in regards to these incidents that take place throughout this country. We jump up, we run, we cheer, we shout, we protest, we tear down stuff and all of that, but nothing positive or no real traction ever comes out of this until date. Something may happen later on down the road, I don't know. But as long as they see us in individual pockets, we're no great concern. So that's why I believe things are not changing, and we're consistently lured away or drawn out either by, I'm gonna give you some money in your organization, I ain't gonna give them none, whatever the case may be.
Right.
That's what's happening for us, not working collectively.
What's interesting is the whole old, probably the oldest war tactic known to man is divide and conquer, right?
Absolutely.
And I agree with you. I think that's what's happening. But the point of the matter is the time, the time that we're dealing with in these times require unity. We cannot do this in isolation. And whatever the beef, as they say, right? Whatever the problems, we need to put those things aside for the greater good. And that's the thing we want to do. I want to give the people an opportunity to join in on the program. This is a kind of an open forum. I'm talking with Rodney Jones, community activist out of the Pensacola area, and just somebody that I just really enjoy hanging out with. And so give us a call and be a part of the program by giving us a call at 646-558-8656 is the number to call. It's 646-558-8656 is the number to call. Let me slow this down so that you can write it down. It's 646-558-8656. That's the number. The access code to the program that gets you in on the program is 545-094-732. Let me tell you that again. This is the access code. It's 545-094-732. is the number to call. You know, Rodney, one of the challenges we have in really getting traction, I believe we lack, and I don't want to overly generalize, but leadership, right? You know, I mean, I'm talking about people who know how to galvanize, how to bring people together, how to unify people for a common cause. We don't have that in all of the communities. You know, we got people who are concerned about me, my foe, and no more. They get in office and they so afraid that they won't be accepted by the people who are around them at the table, and not concerned about the people who brought them to the table or put them at the table. And they get this notion of invisibility. Once they get there, they think that they're invisible to the public. But the public knows and sees that nothing is coming back to them. They may not know what you're doing in those cloakrooms, but they know they are not being benefited by your presence. And I think that's part of the problem, is that we don't have people with the same sense of urgency, right? That says that what you are going through is important to me, even if I may not be going through it personally, right? What you are going through is important to me, and we got to have leadership that will do that. Leadership that will demand things like police reform. I'm not talking about this cursory situation. I'm talking about changing the culture of policing. And one of the problems that we have that I'm concerned about as well is how we're framing the issue in terms of police, addressing police issues and talking about defunding police. When you talk about it from that vantage point, then you give ammunition to your opponent by saying that we won't have any police. Well, nobody wants to be in a society that does not have police officers that they can call if something happens to them or their family members. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about in terms of defunding police, as I understand it, is that police are asked to do, tasks that they are not necessarily best suited to do. They are not social workers. And so we need that. They're not psychologists and psychiatrists. They're not that. There are other things that they are not. Allow people who have greater, skill sets and proficiencies in those areas, allow them to be a partner with the police, to go out with them to address those things. Mental health people need to have mental health people address them when they're in crisis, because they know how to talk to them. And then allow the police to be the backup. You don't be the front people, you be the backup in case something goes out of hand where your presence is necessary. But allow people who know how to talk to mental health people, or people who are having mental crises or mental breakdowns. Allow those people to do that. So the defunding is not defunding, is reallocating dollars to incorporate more people who have skill sets to work in collaboration with police. Well, that's what community policing is. That's what the whole concept of community policing. We don't really understand what that means. So what people are asking for is community policing, and what they are saying is defunding the police, which is not that. I don't think that dog will hunt. What do you think?
It definitely won't, and it goes back. This is what's going on. Sometimes a narrative is fed to some of our leaders who are in political positions that we put in there, thinking they're going to have our best interests at heart. But a narrative is fed to them, and then they in turn feed this narrative to their constituents, and thereby getting this false narrative of taking all the money away from the police, and the police can't operate, and you ain't got police in your community. That's what's happening, and many of the individuals who are out there don't really know, are not being specific when they say defund police. As you just articulated, the most you hear coming from other individuals, or some individuals that I've heard talk about defunding police, there is no back dialogue. to specify what they mean when they say defund the police. They don't talk about any of the other components that's associated with policing, whereas you can reallocate that funding. But again, that goes back to our leadership again. We got leaders who are in place, or leaders who are in the community, not just political leaders, but leaders who are running organizations and churches in our community, perpetuating the same idea. And that really burns me up to no degree, Mr. Omar, simply because you got people talking about stuff they don't really know. They have this surface level knowledge of something, and they think they got it because they're the pastor of 500 people, or they've been elected to this political position, and they don't. That bothers me to some degree, and I have to share that with people so they'll understand that, hey man, just because he's there, or just because he says he's a leader, or just because he has a title, doesn't mean he has your best interest at heart. And what I'm saying is, he may miscommunicate or do poor communication in regards to bringing messages and information to our community, whereas this information impacts us directly.
You know, what's interesting that you said that is that a lot of people, and this is not all people, we're not doing a broad brush, but people don't do the proper due diligence in leadership to get the information they need to make decisions, or to, as you so aptly articulated, communicate properly to the masses, right? I mean, if you don't know, you know, I often say you can't teach what you don't know, and you can't lead where you don't go, you know? I mean, the point of the matter is, many people don't understand these things, but this is where the enemy, or the people who are in opposition to you, can use your words, can use your actions against you when you don't know, and when you can't articulate, when you don't understand these concepts, then you can miss out on a lot of support because you've not known how to frame the issue. This is one thing that I am convinced of, is how you frame the issue determines who embraced the cause. How you frame the issue determines who embraced the cause. If you don't know how to frame the issue, you cannot get support for what it is you're doing. And it's important to understand that. I want to go back to this notion of getting our political leaders to be held accountable as well. I mean, how do we do that? We talked about accountability in terms of the police and getting them to be accountable for their action, to have continuum of force protocol, all of those things, Rodney. But we got mayors, and we have city council people, we got county commission people who fund the sheriff department and all of that. Should they be held accountable as well, if in their inactions and dereliction of their duties to create some kind of standard for their police department to use whatever force they use to subdue that, and to treat all citizens fairly and equitably? Should we now not hold them responsible as well?
We should absolutely hold them responsible. But I think a lot of the thing that happened is a lot of politicians, sheriffs, people who are in influential positions, they kind of have groups that they pick and choose. Now, this is what happens. I'm gonna give you 20,000. I'm gonna give you 5,000. I'm gonna give you 7,000. I'm gonna give you 8,000. So now I have these advocators kind of out here, but not necessarily advocating from a verbal perspective. Not saying, you know, from this screaming from the rooftops, or not out with the picket signs, but be silent, because they know that this is who gave me this little $5,000 that I needed. I thought I needed, and I ain't gonna say nothing. I just ain't gonna get in that. And so what happens is the masses kind of get the impression that they really ain't got nobody to lead them. They'll go, but who gonna lead me to in this fight? If the leaders are taking, if you will, compensations, um, and being silent, that makes the masses afraid to hold them accountable because most of them know you ain't gonna say nothing. You're gonna have me out here by myself. And so therefore we find this dynamics at play, whereas nobody really wants to challenge, everybody wants to challenge, but people are afraid that they won't have any real backing to get any satisfaction.
You know, it's interesting. You know what you're saying is that many of our leaders, in this in organizations and many other spaces, they are getting paid off to be user friendly, right? And
kind of sort of that, kind of sort of.
I mean, you kind of sort of said that. I mean, that's what you said.
That's right. That's right.
You know, I mean, the point of the matter is this. You know, think about it. Think about this, man. We got all these critical issues, and we don't have solutions because we continue to go around and around the issues and not deal with them directly. I mean, the point of the matter is we have 18,000 police departments, Rodney, in this country. 18,000, right? There is no mandatory reporting when a police officer shoot a citizen. There is no mandatory reporting. Do you know when you have an accident with your car, that everybody know it all over the country with that car was in the accident, right? I mean, there are things that happen to you, and they can check out your record anywhere in the world, won't they? They can almost Google you and get information on you. But do you know there's no system that says that this officer was engaged in misconduct? Even when they're fired, that is not transferred in any database. And so until we're able to do things that are fundamental, like just tracking where bad police officers are and where they go so that they don't get back in the system to reoffend and to either hurt or, worst case scenario, kill citizens.
That's right.
That's one of the things that's a small thing that can be done, right? The other thing has to be is that until we're willing, and this is something that as I train police officers and talk to chiefs, is that we have to be willing to change the culture of policing from this notion of being a warrior, being against people, a war against something, to being a guardian, that you are there to serve and protect the citizens. And the other thing is critically important is how you talk to someone has a lot to do with how they respond to you. That's the same thing as just being a human being. When somebody's coming cussing at you and fussing at you and barking out different kinds of orders for you to do things, there's what we call a reactive instinct that we normally react to people taking away what we call our rights, right? So if you do it in the wrong way, you create opposition to what you're trying to do, that you end up having to force someone into compliance when you could have talked to them properly, and they probably would have willingly complied with what you were trying to get done, particularly if it's lawful. And the last thing that I say about this, a lot of police officers engage in demands of citizens that's not constitutional, that they are violating constitutional rights of citizens because they don't know what the Constitution affords citizens. And so we need to make sure that all police officers read the Constitution and are taught the Constitution so that they understand when they are in violation of the constitutional rights of the citizens. That's part of what we need to be doing. We got a plethora of things that we need to be working on, and that's so critically important that we do this now. I want to move to the situation with unemployment. The last I checked, they have stopped now the unemployment, and they've not reinstated it, particularly the $600, where people needed that to try to make ends meet. They still have very high unemployment in the African American community.
Mm-hmm.
No additional stimulus money has been afforded since I think they gave the $1,200 or something like that, and that was back in March, in April primarily. Maybe some people got it in May. Well, that money is gone. So what happens to people who are now still unemployed? Because of COVID, they cannot move around. There are a lot of businesses have shut down or gone to hybrid structures. What happens to those individuals? And I think and we got Congress that's gone back home when you got people who are still suffering. So I'm concerned about unemployment and how that correlates with crime, because hurt people.
Well, you already know that. That's one of the key ingredients to a potential time bomb, to hurt someone, and you never know what's on their mind from that point. Congress has in mind. I think their overall thinking is that people are getting over on the system, based on some of the hearings I've listened to. Their thought process is now people are getting over on the system. They're taking this money, they're getting this weekly payment. They don't want to go back to work. They're laying up on the couch eating chips and zuzus and wham whams and cakes, cookies and candies, and they're not paying all their rent and all of that stuff. So why should we give it to them? But the idea is that they're going to hurt a large population of our community that's already hurting. Go back to hurting people, hurt people. The people who need this the most, because everybody ain't laying up on their couch. Everybody ain't just taking this money and spending it frivolously. Many people are taking portions of that money and giving the landlord something. And those are the people who are finding themselves in this adverse condition based on the fact people think that they are, or Congress thinks that this money is being used frivolously. And so we find ourselves in this position once again where the African American community is the community that's going to suffer the brunt of this, not reinstating this particular unemployment component, based on the fact that many of us are at a lower socioeconomic status. Right. If you take that little bit from us,
right,
you're going to drive me to a place you probably don't want to see me or deal with me, because I got to eat. Even if I ain't got no family to feed, I'm trying to feed myself.
Interestingly enough, and you mentioned this, and I've heard the same arguments, Rodney, as well. But, they don't have that kind of argument when they give billions and billions of dollars to corporations.
That's right.
That don't even need it.
At all.
Right. But they don't say that, that they are taking advantage of the system when they get these $1 trillion bailouts. They don't say that. It's only when poor people are helped that they say this. And when you're talking about $600, man, that's so small, relatively speaking, right, to what you spend in other areas. And people, when you have forced them into staying at home, and not, because we don't have traditional job situations. We, Rodney, we be out there on the hustle, right?
That's right. That's
so
what we be on.
We be on a hustle. So when you stop my hustle, and then refuse to assist me, then you put me in a desperate situation, and we know that desperate people do desperate things. And and like you're saying, man, we can create more of a problem by not being proactive and addressing this, and giving enough to also stimulate the economy. Because one thing about Black people, if they get money, they spending it. So at least it's going back into the economy, right?
That's right.
So
yeah, we really gotta, I give us as Black people, as African American people, as Black Americans, I give us all the credit in the world. We are intelligent, strong people, and collectively, it ain't nothing on this planet can stop us from rising to a level that we can be a blessing or be strength for our entire population. And that's what has to happen, though. We have to move in a collective fashion. How do we do that all over this country? Now, I can do it in one community at a time. And that's my message to everybody. We do it one community at a time because the community at large is being affected by the same thing. I don't care, your organization, your organization, your organization, all of us are feeling the woes of these things that are being handled in our society. The killing of George Floyd, the latest shooting of Mr. Jacobs. All of these things impact our community, whether you're white or black. You got to understand that now. White folks have a inkling of fear based on what black people might do. People, we can resolve a lot of these issues in our own communities by working collectively together. Many of us, and using our intellect that we so graciously have been given to maneuver economically so that more funding will come into our communities to alleviate more stresses in our community, which will be beneficial, not just for my community, but it will resonate throughout the communities in this city, in this state, in this country.
Yeah. You're absolutely correct. But we got to get to a space where we understand that we're interrelated and interdependent. If I got to care about you, right? I got to care about whether or not you eat, that your family eat. I got to care about that. And even if I'm eating okay, I got to care about other folk eating okay. And we have to be able to collectively say that we're in this together. That's one of the concepts that we got to have. I want to move to this space. I think you worked on mental health counseling before, and
yes, sir.
And when you are in constant, state of depression and being bombarded with multiplicity of issues and vicarious trauma from all of these things that's happening all around you, it can create a depression, PTSD, if you will.
Yes, indeed.
How do we address that issue when we have shut down our mental health clinics all over this country, and we've substituted them with jails that we defunded? That's what they did. They defunded. They're talking about defunding police. They defunded the social work. They defunded mental health people. They defunded many of the other services that people needed in order to sustain themselves. And so what do we do to deal with this notion of mental health for the community?
I think that's one of the biggest issues we have now, especially in lower socioeconomic status communities and in the country at large, simply because funding has been taken from the mental health fields. If people really understand, and I know people say they understand how many people who come from lower socioeconomic statuses are impacted, and recently have started using the terminology PTSD associated with it. But I don't think they really get it, Mr. Omar, because if they did, it would be an emergency fund set up for mental health in these communities that suffer.
Well, break it down. Tell us what they don't get. Tell us what you see.
They don't get the many traumas that are associated with living in particular environments. Some people don't even understand that there are different levels of poverty in the midst of poverty. And I could suffer a great amount of traumas than this individual who lives next door to me, based on the fact his parent, one of them work, at least one of them's in the house, at least somebody feeds them. But my parent, none of them works. They hustle each and every day. They're not home at night. I'm left to self-governing, and I might not get a meal. And people got to understand that there's more than just looking at the people who live in the AKA ghettos or the lower parts of society or the cesspools or whatever the case may be, or whatever they determine, saying, yeah, they may suffer from some trauma. So you got to understand, this is severe trauma. It's more than just a routine type of trauma that's associated with one particular incident. People who come from these environments suffer traumas every day. Many are in the midst of a day based on the environments that they live in. So if we don't understand, if we understood that to its real degree, we would immediately started to put more mental health workers out in our community, funding more community organizations so they can have a mental health person at these community centers and things of that nature, so that people have easy access, but not just easy access, a friendly access. And what I mean by that is having people who look like them to greet them and receive them and bring them into an environment that they might be able to get some of their issues resolved, or at least alleviate some of the stresses.
You know, it's interesting. I'm so glad that you raised that, because this notion, you know, we've had, in fact, I think you may have been on when we had the Association of Black Psychologists
I
on
did, I
before.
was.
And one of the challenges that they have is that, you know, resources is not directed towards them. A lot of the work they do is pro bono, where they are literally, you know, offering their services to communities at no cost, because there's no funding associated with that. And I think that when you look at your budget, that tells you, or at least it tells me, your priorities. Whatever you're spending your money on, to me, that's your priority. And when we're not spending money on our people, particularly in mental health issue, because I'm convinced that a lot of people are trying to cope with mental health challenges and not doing it well. They have created all kinds of you know, trauma within the family. The parents are not as attentive to the children because they are depressed and many other things. The children see the depression of the parent and get depressed themselves, or a young man go out and try to hustle for his mama because he sees her in need, and then his hustle is not appropriate. It becomes illegal, and so therefore he gets into the system trying to save his mama from the pain that she's experiencing, and it becomes a vicious cycle. And that's something that we got to deal with. That, you know, we talk about unemployment and all of those things, and not providing unemployment checks to people and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of other things that can happen that are bad outcomes when you don't support people to the point of having creature comforts, and that's critically important. All right. You know, we talked about a whole lot of things. One of the things that,
absolutely.
you know, one of the things that I hadn't updated. Tell me what's happening with the school system in Pensacola. Anything new?
Nothing real new. We're back in school. I think we're having an issue with this remote learning. My kids are doing remote learning. They're currently here at my office now. I got a setup for them here, but the school told them, their teachers told them yesterday, they're only going to do this for 9 weeks. I think, and that's based on the issues that they're having with this remote learning. Many of them can't get the classes that they wanted based on they don't have it set up for that. You might have to go in. I say, you defeating the purpose now. You know, if you got me in a position where you told me that, okay, this will be a vehicle that you can use and I'm gonna get the same services. But now I'm in this vehicle driving alone, and all of a sudden you tell me there's a detour. I can't very well get to where I need to be with this vehicle. So there are some issues, and I'm thinking at the end of this first 9 weeks, they're gonna stop remote altogether. So that's gonna be a change.
You know, that's interesting. And I'm also concerned about this, Rodney, is what about children who have, you know, mental challenges, or, you know, are not computer literate, special, I don't know if they still call it special education or special needs children. You know, what happens to those children who do not get the, you know, professional support they need educationally? What happens to them? Have we created any provision for that? Because they can't just go on a computer and process all of that. They're not at that level of mental competency.
Absolutely. I'm really not sure, because interesting enough, I hadn't heard much dialogue, and I've attended school board meetings. I was just at a school board meeting a few weeks back. I did have an interesting dialogue with some other community leaders in regards to going back to school, but I have not specifically heard any direct conversation about individuals or youth who have mental handicaps or mental disabilities or physical disabilities for that matter. You know, they may not can be on, like you said, the keyboard, or they may not have the mental aptitude to follow along from a virtual perspective. And I haven't heard much dialogue in regards to that. So in fact, I got to investigate that. Absolutely.
Right. Well, that's, we have to, when it's something about it. You're a minister, you know what this is about. Until you do it to the least of these, when you do it to the least of these, you do it also unto me. And so we have to be thinking about the people on the lower run of society. We need to think about our children and in all of our children with all of their needs and all of the complexities associated with our children and their development. We have to think about the single mother who's trying to figure out how she's going to feed her children with no real income. We're going to have to think about the father that may not even be in the child's life, but out there on the hustle trying to eat himself, right? We got to think about all of those things, and we have to think about it in a systematic way by which we are able to have sustained support for them until we can get over this thing. Let me say this about voter, because I want to end up on voting. Rodney, we got to get our people to the polls, and we cannot wait to the last minute, to the last 2 weeks of an election cycle and try to motivate Black people to go to the polls, and particularly those who feel like they are exposing themselves unduly to the COVID-19 pandemic by going into the polling booths. Many people are resisting that. And if we don't get this absentee voting right, then we will have a lot of people who won't participate in the process. I'm convinced of that. And so I think we need to be very aggressive, very proactive, very intentional about how do we engage people. That's why I'm coming up with this campaign again. Vote and remove all doubt. That's what this is. That's what this is about. There are people who don't understand that. I believe, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, that if this president is reelected, I think that he's an existential threat to not only this country and its democracy, but to the world. That's how serious this is. And so for anybody who's not taking it seriously, anybody who's not posturing themselves and positioning themselves to vote, that I think that's a serious issue. And I don't want people to think that because I don't like Trump, he can't win. I didn't think he could win the first time, but he did. Right?
Yes, he did.
So I believe he can win again. Now, he's convinced me that he knows how to win again. And so what I'm going to do is do everything I can to ensure that our people get out to vote. So you will hear every show from now to November 3rd, you will hear every show me mention something about voting. Every show. It is so critically important. We just had an election in Tuskegee, was in Alabama, on yesterday. And we have some runoffs going on there. And I'm going to try to get some people on with that. We have, other people running for office for November. I'm going to try to get them on to talk about what they're doing, not only with getting the vote out, but also what their agenda is for the people. Hiring people to do something that they don't do for you is like paying for something you never get. And I think that we need to be able to make sure that we're getting a great return on our investment as we elect competent, committed leadership to the needs and causes of the masses, the people.
Absolutely,
Right?
absolutely. I'm at the same place. I'm going to try to talk about it. Well, not try, but I am going to talk about voting and voter education up until election time. I think it is critical for individuals to get out and participate in this process because, as you said before, who thought Trump would have won the last one? But he did. I mean, even if you don't like the Democratic ticket, and there's a lot of, mixed emotions about the ticket.
Talk a little bit about that, Rodney. Tell me what's, they don't think that Biden has got enough energy or that he's too old. What's the scutterbug out in the street? Tell me what's up. Whenever I want to know what's happening in the streets, I come to you, man, because you know what the brothers and the sisters are saying, talking about. Tell me what's happening out there. What they talking?
Absolutely. One, I think it is his age is a factor and his energy is a factor. To the degree that there's already talk about he's a one-term president. So that is something that a lot of people, Democrats, are going to think about. We're going to switch out right now, and then what will he do in there if he might not could do another term? How much can he do for us? A lot of people are looking at that. Also, they're looking at, Joe is a little, he might be a little passive sometimes. Can he really take the gloves off? Because he's going to have to take the gloves off in regard to this dude.
No, man, because that's another thing that it's like, I think it was Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we go high. And there's some people saying, that don't work with this president.
It doesn't.
That this person, you cannot be passive with this person. It's like a bully. You hear people say you got to hit a bully in the mouth. I mean,
yes, sir. You do.
So that So what's your thoughts about that?
Well, and that's the truth, man. I think you're gonna have to hit a bully, or at least this bully, you're gonna have to hit in the mouth. He's gonna have to take the gloves off, because he has a lot of kind of stuff that could be questionable. His policy on China, where you gonna go with that? Trump has been going at technology agencies and organizations and their CEOs since he's been in there. You got Zuckerberg, now you got TikTok, all of that. What is his policies on that? And then you got Harris, who's kind of cozy up with some of these technology giants out there. So we got a few things in the issues in association with policy. Trump got some okay policy, but he gonna have to be able to, if you will, for lack of a better word, Trump. You know what I'm saying? Otherwise, we're gonna find ourselves in a real precarious predicament when it comes election day.
Right. Well, certainly, the key to this now is that everyone needs to gear up to vote. Everybody, right. All families, all organizations, all churches, everyone must be gearing up right now to vote. Vote and remove all doubt. That's going to be the concept. That's going to be my theme. I hope that it's adopted on a national level. We're going to be talking with some people, and hopefully we can get this concept out. But vote and remove all doubt is the concept. I'm going to vote, right? If I'm above ground, and if it's any way possible, I'm voting. And so the point of the matter is that everybody has to commit to that. You got the panhandle of Florida. If we can get Florida to come out and vote, and probably get the returning citizens the opportunity to vote, and that they actually exercise that right, that can be the tipping point. That can be the margin of victory. You don't have to be the majority, Rodney. You can be the margin of victory, right? And I believe that the returning citizens could very well be that margin of victory. Isn't that something?
Absolutely. And it could be. And I'm on board with you, Mr. Omar. And I think at this particular juncture, that should be the mindset of individuals and leaders out here in our community. Because if we don't get out, it ain't gonna work for us. You look at Trayvon Martin's mother. She lost her race by about 300 and some votes, which is terrible when you look at the amount of people who didn't come out to vote. So we gotta press this as often and as loud as we particularly can. Even if you don't like the Biden-Harris ticket, vote against Trump. Vote
Right.
against Trump. A vote against Trump, puts us in a better place. Just say, okay, I'm voting for them because I don't like Trump. If that's your position,
Right.
me, I'm trying to change the guard. I got to.
Right.
It's just mandatory.
Well, we in this together, brother. So we're gonna be talking.
Yes,
I'm gonna engage you with the program. I just love your spirit. I love the way you think. I love your honesty and candor, because you've always been straightforward with me. You tell me what you think, and you've given yourself permission to be truthful, and that's so critically important, man, as we go through this time. You know, we've gone through an hour. You and I just hung out. Just for an hour is gone already.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? It's just,
Yeah.
it does that when you're having fun. Well,
Yes,
I'd like to thank Rodney Jones again for joining with us on this segment of You Got the Power. Again, a local community activist. That's what I call him. He's a community activist. He does a lot of other things, but he's really engaged in the community. He loves his people, and he does everything he can to make sure that their interest is served. Well, the clock on the wall says it's time for us to go. Don't forget, I told you about this. It's called Vote and Remove All Doubt.
All doubt. I like
That's what it's about. Vote and remove all doubt. What we're going to do is we're going to make that the theme. That's going to be our revolving theme. Vote and remove all doubt. That's what we're going to be working on. And of course, we'd like for you to support this program, and this is how you can do it. Send your checks and money orders in care of You Got the Power at P.O. Box 146, Tuskegee, Alabama, 36087. That's P.O. Box 146, Tuskegee, Alabama, 36087. You also can catch us on our Facebook page with Cash App as well as PayPal to support the program. I appreciate that. I'd like to thank everybody for all of your words of comfort and prayers as we laid our mother to rest on Saturday. It was a beautiful, spirit-filled homegoing for my mother. So thank you all so very much for everything, both seen and unseen. And as I leave you each and every Wednesday, I leave you with these two words. Remember that I love you with a perfect love. But more importantly, remember this. You got the power. We'll see you next week, same time, same station. Have a wonderful day.
Yes.
Bye-bye.